Hi everyone, welcome back to Missions Bayou. Today I'm joined by my lovely co-host Brenna, and we have Michael Williamson, the president and CEO of United Way Southeast Louisiana, a nonprofit working to eradicate poverty in Southeast Louisiana. Welcome to Missions Bayou, Michael.
Thank y'all for having me on.
I want to start with, what are the goals and the mission of United Way? I know a lot of people have heard of you guys, but let's get into what you guys actually do. What's the goals?
Yeah, so I like to think of the saying, go big or go home, right? And so we recently announced our bold goal to help 100,000 individuals that live below the ALICE threshold, we'll talk about that, get on pathways to prosperity by 2035. But ultimately, our goal is to eradicate poverty in Southeast Louisiana.
And when was that goal set?
So we publicly talked about it at our annual meeting last June, but we're now in the throes of inviting our partners to the table that will seek funding from us to help us kind of execute. So I'd say more formally, we're launching our plans to do that over the course of this year and the next 10 years.
Wow, 10 years, 100,000 people.
It's a long time.
Big goal. Go big or go home is really your motto.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned ALICE thresholds. What are ALICE families and what does the ALICE report tell us?
So I like to always joke and, start with a joke and kind of get to the serious stuff. But ALICE is an acronym, but it's also the name of my mother-in-law. So we can talk about that report, which she could say, I could say was named in her honor. But in all seriousness, ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And it's a study of financial hardship, right? And say, what we could call the working poor, folks that are struggling every day, doing all the right things, working a job or two or three sometimes, but still unable to afford the basics like housing, childcare, food, transportation, the things we know are the basic needs and the building blocks to a good life.
I like that you spelled that out because I've heard people talk about ALICE before, but when you say the E as employed, I think that's what people forget. Is a lot of these people are working poor. They have 1 to 2 jobs. It's not like they are not working, and it's still not enough for some families.
Yeah, it is amazing. A lot of the outreach work that I've done in my personal life involves houseless individuals, and a lot of them have jobs. They have jobs they have to be at regularly every day, and the cascading effect of sleeplessness, not being able to pay your bills, not being housed, and then having to show up to work every day. You're not your best self. And it feels a lot of the time like there's nowhere to go from there.
Well, certainly, it's, I think you're helping to underscore that, ALICE individuals that we know, that sometimes you may work alongside of them or you may interact with them, when you're in a grocery store or you're a coffee shop, picked all the places, engaging with the healthcare aid. These are ALICE, but to your point, because of the growing affordability crisis in the country, housing's expensive. And sometimes folks have to make choices like I can't afford housing, so I'm gonna sleep in my car. Or if I'm fortunate, I'm gonna sofa serve from family to family, member, neighbor to neighbor, folks will give me shelter. We know long-term that's not sustainable. And to your point, it shows up in the workplace and it shows up in their performance, which has a drastic economic impact on our state of Louisiana, but also the country.
How does the ALICE report inform United Way on what initiatives you guys should be doing in Southeast Louisiana?
Well, you can't go big or go home. You can't announce some massive aspirational goal to achieve over the next 10 years without having a plan.
Right.
And plans have to be data driven. We have to have a full understanding of what the issues are and really unpack those in ways that give us line of sight around, well, how do we address these issues? How do you address housing affordability and homeownership or access to transportation or childcare? And so data is central to everything that we do. And it's something we use to paint the case, not just for ourselves, make the case for ourselves as we look to deploy the resources we have and our attention, but also policymakers and business leaders to give them access to data to help them make better informed decisions around them as employers or as policymakers who are making laws and changing laws. And so data is central, and the ALICE report is a very comprehensive, deep, but also really easy to understand report.
And how do you decide which initiatives maybe had worked in the past but don't go forward, or how to start new initiatives from that report?
Once again, data matters. We talk about outcomes, results. You think return on investment from a business standpoint, we look at that in the form of outcomes, both individual and community level. And so if you're doing a program or running a program or initiative and you're not getting the outcomes that you're anticipating or expecting, what you're seeking to do, but you're spending financial resources, donor resources, it's incumbent upon us to kind of take a look and say, okay, maybe that's not working. We need to figure a different strategy or stop doing it altogether because it's not worth the investment.
Right. And in this process of looking at the data and things like that, can you tell us how the poverty simulation workshop works and how that's connected?
Absolutely. So there are a number of these that are out there. We can conduct them. There are other partners that do it. But poverty simulations are exercises that take everyday average people, got a good job, paying your bills, taking care of your family. You're not struggling financially, but put them in positions where they're forced to make the same choices that individual Alice or somebody who's living in abject poverty has to make every day, to understand these are the choices folks make. These are the systems they operate in. And without changing them, you're really setting people up for failure. And the takeaway is always, you can have a couple dozen people participating. They're frustrated. They get mad. Like, why can't I have this? Or why can't you do this for me? And the response is, well, we don't have the resources. Or, well, that policy doesn't apply to you. You make too much money to get, SNAP benefits, but still you can't afford to feed yourself. And so it takes individuals and puts them in making those very difficult decisions. And folks walk away. First, they're mad because it shouldn't be that way. But then they think about, what can I do to help fix these systems? And that's where United Way comes in, because we can help foster and create the settings where people can actually take those frustrations and anger that they have and do good with it and help influence policymakers and contribute to meaningful work that's actually making a difference.
Right.
I think the poverty simulator is so important because we forget that like our everyday inconveniences are nothing compared to someone who's like, what do you mean I can't get SNAP? Like I make too much, but then I don't make enough to stock my fridge.
Right.
What am I supposed to do with this? You know?
And situational frustrations versus existential frustrations. Like my existence can't go on in these conditions, but it has to. That kind of anger, again, filters into every interaction you have with your family, with your kids, with your employer. It's like,
because this person then has to still go back to work, right? Like,
oh yeah,
it's bigger than just waking.
They have to go back to work.
They have to. Yeah, they don't.
Well, think about this. Like, think about how we talked about what you had for breakfast earlier, but think about if you were hungry all day, the impact that would have on the way you treat people around you. Not by design, not that you want to, but you're frustrated. Your body's telling you, I need to eat, but you can't.
Right.
And so it's human nature to kind of take that out on the people around us.
Of course.
You compound that with not just one day, but multiple days. Not having a comfortable place to sleep, a good meal. And then you show up and people expect you to be like normal.
Oh, yeah.
But you haven't been exposed to normal, we would say, humane conditions, especially in the United States of America.
Right. I spent probably my first 10 years of employment, my first job even, in the service industry, food service particularly. You really have to be your best self to deal with just like the litany of people that come to you. I can't imagine how I would certainly have been, you would have seen me in the headlines if I had to deal with all of those existential factors while literally catering and serving to people. Yeah. Existential frustration.
I think too,
for sure.
You look at, data and information out there around like our state, one of the more depressed states when it comes to mental health, in the country. And, you can track that with our high rates of poverty and financial instability. And so that's just setting up all these other issues. You can think about crime and violence. That's an outcome of these circumstances. Alcohol, substance abuse, a result of, abuse and neglect. So all these things are kind of grounded in these really less than humane conditions that, quite frankly, a large portion of our community is exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't, the individual and the society, they mirror each other, right? So like if I'm mean to Maya and I deprive Maya of things, Maya's not going to treat me well in return, nor should she, right? There's not exactly like a tit for tat that goes on, but there's like a reciprocity there.
Right.
And that expands to society as a whole, I think. But
well, and who else will I mistreat because of how my experience with you?
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's flip that though. Imagine the polar opposite, that, you're able to each treat each other well. You're in an environment and conditions where you're thriving, not just surviving. And so you're treating each other well. That can extend a lot farther and help create conditions for everybody to succeed and thrive. And that's why, we like to think at United Way of Southeast Louisiana, like we often talk about, we sit at the intersection of the two, those that could benefit from a thriving, community of individuals and those that aren't. And we can connect those who want to help to those who need help in a very, easy and real way that leads to really positive outcomes for the entire community. I think it's, not to go biblical here, but, this is a real example of how the rising tide raises all boats.
Very true. What should other organizations, companies, and policymakers know or learn from the Alice report?
Well, I think, understanding the consequences of Alice as we talk about it, and there's tons of data in the report that you can kind of look through. As we say, unpack, because it's a lot to take in. But to understand the consequences that Alice faces, but as employers, as business leaders, so you can work to both change those conditions, which is how you work with us to help change those conditions, but also understand when folks are showing up. They may come with those experiences, those challenges they're living out day to day. And are you building a work environment that's accommodating and conducive to helping, address those challenges? So we think about employers who support, access to quality early care and education and childcare. Flexible work scheduling. When you're taking care of kids and family, what you need time, flexibility, kind of getting kids to school or taking care of mom if she lives at home with you. Like employers that are understanding of that, recognizing that the Alice report tells us that 1 out of every 2 households is Alice.
Wow.
So, basically sitting in this room, like out of us, like at least one could be considered Alice if we just look at the data. So for employers to understand that, not just build sensitivity and compassion, that's great. We see that as table stakes, right? But more importantly, think about what can I do as a business to support Alice, both in the community, but in my workplace. And I think we often kind of land on kind of this basic but fundamental question business leaders should ask themselves, we all should ask ourselves, is the decision I make today good for Alice? If you can answer yes, then I think we'll have a better community for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the workplace is such a huge, because again, we talk about how this all stems back to everything's going on and then you still have to go clock in. And I think having a workplace where you could be like, hey, boss, it's a day, and just know that they're like, okay, we'll try to get you extra help. We won't give you the 18 top today,
Right.
Just that little bit of like, we'll meet you in the middle of creating a workspace where you can just take a breath instead of feeling like it's just now getting piled onto you again.
Well, and I would also add, because these situations are a two-way street. As employers work to offer compassion, understanding, accommodations for folks who are going through life, challenging times. It's also important to recognize that the individuals play a critical role as well, like to do your best, when those opportunities provided to you to show up and give your best and be the best possible employee you can be and produce, as expected for your job. That's where you see the strong economic benefits of a thriving community, when people are thriving in their workplace, contributing to their work, helping create or serve whatever it is they do. That's what our economy is built on. And the economic returns of that are significant and substantive, and kind of pair nicely with the moral argument, which is let's be good to others and take care of others. But the economic opportunity, when you do, the economic case, then entire communities, or our country for that matter, can thrive.
Right. I was wondering about that when you started talking about the workplace benefits. I'm wondering if there is a concrete financial component for the Scrooges out there who, they're not really so motivated by just the plain compassion of it all. Is there a tangible lower turnover rate in jobs or things like that the data tracks?
So this is kind of a high level example because I was doing some research, live on the North Shore, preparing for some things, and found that just kind of bringing individuals on the North Shore example to kind of a modest, amount of above the Alice threshold. Mm-hmm. Not that's substantial, but modest increases to get those individuals over the Alice threshold, that survival budget. We mentioned that before. But that leads on average to about $2,000 in discretionary spending those individuals have available to them, which if you run the numbers could be upwards of $20 million a year that's going to go back into your local economy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just one small example of how building financial, because folks use those financial resources to pay for things and buy food and put gas in the car and buy diapers and all the things that you need, right? Mm-hmm. So it goes back into our local economy. You're paying taxes. You're paying income taxes. You're paying sales taxes. You create a stronger tax base. I mean, it's really the economic argument is so powerful. Mm-hmm. But that's just one example. We could talk massive increases in gross domestic product, things like that everybody can benefit from in a state like Louisiana.
Yeah, that's something. The follow up is that if you give people more money, people will spend more money.
Let's say, look, it's not just give, because the relationship is, I'm going to employ you to do a task, and your job is to perform that task, and you are earning.
Totally.
You're earning that income. That's a really important distinction because what we see for families we serve is they want that. They want the dignity of work. They want to be able to earn. They don't want it to be given. They don't want the government to have to take care of them. They want to be able to pay for things, but we got to create an environment where that's possible, and create a system that allows that to happen, versus having folks make really tough choices around, well, I can't take that supervisor job because I'll lose my benefits. Mm-hmm. That happens every day. I'm going to lose my child care. I'm going to lose my housing assistance. I'm going to lose SNAP benefits. But that job doesn't pay quite enough to pay for all those things. It's called the benefits cliff. It's a real phenomenon. And we put people in a really tough position. Well, I had a friend of mine say one day, he's like, Michael, they're making a calculated business decision. Mm. It's like, I got to feed my family, I have a house to live in. I got to take care of what I've got here in front of me. And as much as I'd like to earn more money and move up, it's just, and over the long term, it is beneficial. But thinking about that first 6 months to a year that you're navigating that cliff and not having, what you need from a basics standpoint, that becomes a real deterrent for otherwise hardworking individuals in our community.
I think that narrative is lost, that people aren't trying to just get a handout, that these are people who are working really hard, and that they then get stuck in a position like an entry-level position because I never have saved enough to take that pay bump that's also a pay cut at the same time because I'm losing all of my benefits. Right. But also how smart these people are, right? You just called it a strategic business move. These people are working so hard and are making moves that benefit their family, but are also just kind of written off.
Right.
There are two things I point out about Alice individuals, and households. One is it's expensive to be poor. So when you're poor, typically credit rating's not as good.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to go borrow money, you pay more for it. You pay a higher rate of interest. Oftentimes folks will go to a predatory lender or practitioner of predatory lending because they need the financial resources. They're going to pay significant interest rates. The other is it's a full-time job. The reality is when you're not working, you're spending the rest of your time trying to figure out how do I get all the other things to help keep my family whole. You know, free this, free that, you know, free summer camps, free child, like, you know, all these kind of things that folks need to have to kind of keep their family whole. So they spend the other waking hours trying to figure that out and try to figure out what's available in this kind of very complex system of nonprofits and care providers that exist in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday Morning did a story a few months ago, and they covered this family who was living in what do you call the hotels that you stay in long-term stay hotels.
Mm-hmm.
They were paying probably 3 times my rent
Wow.
to stay in that hotel. And I was like, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what city you're in, 3 times what I'm paying for right here, you could rent a house. But they don't have the credit score, and they don't have the first and last month's rent, and all of these other things that they need up front to get themselves, again, into a door where they could easily pay the rent.
Sure.
You've made a good point that outside of just what it costs to monthly maintain a house or apartment, whatever's going to suit your family, you got to have those deposits. You got to have the cash up front. If not, you got to have a credit card, something to put it on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you rack up debt. So those are real challenges that families, so sometimes you're left to just whatever they can do just to kind of inch along until hopefully something happens that'll kind of create an opportunity. But what the data tells us is that's not really happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. I'm like, man, if you guys could just get a check for $2,000, then you could maybe move forward and like move out of the hotel. But like, how does a $2,000 check just fall into your lap? You know,
Right.
it doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Well, even if there's organizations like ours that are out there that can help
Mm-hmm.
with things like that, and there are organizations that try sustainability.
Right.
You want to set individuals up for success.
Yeah.
So sustainability means a livable wage, job that allows you to pay for that, that apartment or, that home, to put food on the table and meet those other basic needs. And what we see for Alice is oftentimes they don't qualify for a lot of the public benefits that are out there. So they're having to go to like food pantries and nonprofits that may have sliding scale programming or maybe have something special tailored, but those are few and far between because the nonprofit system in our community, in our region, our state, doesn't have the financial resources.
Yeah.
The contributions aren't coming in
Mm-hmm.
at the level that would support those kind of programs. So you end up kind of creating a rut
Mm-hmm.
for people to stay in. It's very, very difficult to get out.
Yeah, very difficult to get out. I'm wondering, how can people get involved with this initiative or United Way Southeast Louisiana in general?
Yeah, like we love for folks to get engaged. One is just to sign up for our newsletter, to get more information, just become more educated and informed about the work that we're doing across the region. And I'll say this and I'll say it again, but easy enough. You go to UnitedWay.scla.org. You can sign up for our e-news there. But also, for folks who contribute to United Way. If you're a business, make a corporate gift. If you have employees, allow us to come in and talk to your employees. Your employees now have the opportunity to give through what we would call a workplace campaign. There are also folks out there like, I don't have a lot of money to give, but I want to help. There's a role there too. You can be a volunteer. Sign up to get updates about our volunteer center and things that you could do just to give back in the community and make an impact that way. And last but not least, and probably one of the biggest ways outside of financially supporting us, is get involved with our public policy and advocacy work. Help us shape the policies of our future for the state, for the region, even at the federal level. Like we have, when we speak with one voice, we can shape policy. We can convince lawmakers to change things so they'd be good for Alice and answer that question. So you basically boil it down. You can give, You can advocate, you can volunteer, but either way, we hope you connect with us.
Well, before we wrap up, we have a fun question for you.
All right, let's do it.
So you mentioned 7 parishes you guys cover, so that's a lot of running around for you. What's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Oh, Lord. If I can make it to the weekend, I like to go out on the river.
Which one?
Chifuncta River.
The Chifuncta.
That's my happy place. That's why I like driving across the causeway and just looking at the water, when it's so peaceful. You get to, see creation's finest, right? But I like to spend time on the water. Might have a cold beverage as well. But that's kind of my happy place. Other than that, when I'm at home during the week, it's like wife, 2 dogs, a cat, the farm at home. But they're happy. They're always happy to see you.
Yeah.
So there's nothing better than walking in your house and your animals are like, you
miss
could
you
have
all
a
day.
terrible day, but you know
Yeah.
what? They're so glad to see you. So that's kind of. But I enjoy everything I do. I enjoy running all over all the 7 parishes we serve, meeting the people that we're there to serve, the people that are serving alongside of us. Really blessed to do what I do, and even better to bring it on your show.
I love that. My grandmother lives in Madisonville, and I was sitting by the Chifuncta one day, and there was a guy. He was in a blow-up raft that had a motor, like a tiny motor that he had attached on it with his dog. He was too big for the raft, and his feet. He was an older guy. His feet were like hanging off the raft, and he was just puttering down the river. I was like, he's living the life.
Yeah.
Some of
He's
those guys
living the
live on
life.
the water over there, but you see it all. But not to digress, but when you're sitting on the water, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like nobody's having a bad day.
Everyone left their bad day on shore.
They left it. They left it in the car. Like it just, and so. But quite frankly, I think about Alice households, and every Alice household, every Alice individual should have that same opportunity.
Oh yeah. Everyone deserves the dignity of rest for sure.
Yeah.
I'm also a water girly, but I don't live near the water really, so I'll do a bath. I'll do a bath and a book.
Yeah.
That gets me right every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
About
Bath,
you,
2-hour bath, book,
Yeah.
TikTok scrolling.
Yes.
I don't do that. I'm speaking for my wife. But.
Yeah.
A bath or a foot soak. If I'm like, don't have the time to do a full bath, I'll just soak the feet and just sit, read, scroll something.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
that.
Well, whatever it takes. So you wake up and hit the ground, run the next day, and keep doing what you're doing.
Sure. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Can you share with our listeners where they can find United Way, any socials, websites, all the things?
Love to do it. We always love to have folks check out our website. It's kind of brand new, so it's pretty cool. But you can get that at unitedwaysela.org. Everything's right there. You can click and search all the way through it, but you also find us on social, follow us on all things like Instagram, X, and Facebook. You can just find the handle, look for the handle United Way SELA. We do hope folks choose to join us. Like I said, you can give, you can advocate, you can volunteer, but we do hope you connect.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Missions Bayou, powered by Comfy Stone. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment, letting us know your thoughts and who you'd like to hear from next. We'll see y'all next time.